I'm going to talk fairly broadly about a lot of the contextual shifts that are happening, which I believe put at the very centre the idea of what it means to be human and how we create more human-centric organisations. And being in the professional body for the HR profession, I'm also saying that we need to put the human back into human resources, because a lot of what we've done over the last 20 or 30 years is kind of proceduralised everything and create lots of rules and policies and practices, and rather forgotten actually at the heart of everything are people. And of course that's the big theme for today. Now I'm going to press the wrong button probably and something terrible will happen here, but let's see what happens. There we go. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Henry. Yeah, so lots of ways of thinking about the contextual shifts. I mean, political, yeah, you're probably familiar with the PEST model, like political, economic, social and technological change. I mean, I don't have to tell you politically, you know, what's going on, more and more uncertainty. We just had another extraordinary election, and again a reminder about how important it is to listen to people, and why can't politicians listen to people? And it's the same thing actually in many businesses. Why can't business leaders listen to people? So employee voice, people's voice, is one of the things that resonates more and more strongly through these sorts of debates. We've obviously got a lot of debate now about what is globalization. Are we in the fourth wave of globalization where, you know, as I describe it, it feels like the handbrakes are coming on. We've been growing over the last 20, 30 years into this world which is connect everything. You know, movement of goods, services and labour, ideas all flowing all around the place. And then people starting to talk about, hold on a second, that's not good for me. What's my world? I'm getting affected by this. It's not all good for me. We've got obviously social change. I mean, when you talk, Laura, about the smartphone and all of that, I often reference my own children. I got my own social experiment going on at home. I got 3 daughters, 2 Gen Y, so 26 and 22, and then I got a Gen Z, a 19-year-old, and the difference of the Gen Z from the Gen Y is they are the true digital natives. They have only ever known what we think of technology, and they just think of stuff. And my youngest daughter is a classic of this generation. She is completely hardwired to devices, phones, iPads, laptops, TV, all going on at once, right? And then you come up to her and say, can you stop watching The Only Way is Essex, because that's nonsense and polluting your mind, because I want to watch the football. And she said, you can't, because I'm watching Towie. And then she's doing all these other things at once. And I say, but you can't be doing it all at once. And I say, so what is going on Towie? Not that it takes a rocket scientist, but she'll say, she'll say this, and this. And so there is a sort of, you know, growing evidence that perhaps this generation is getting wired differently. I mean, we grow up with this stuff, we're going to get wired differently. Attention span much shorter, but also perhaps an ability to multitask. Now, is that real or not? I don't know. Helps that she's a woman, of course, right? But it's a sort of, as you said, it's bombarding with stuff going on in our lives every day. And technology, of course, a massive part of these shifts as well. And technology of itself, you know, a lot of debate, people talk about the fourth industrial revolution. You know, we're now into this world of machine learning and artificial intelligence and advanced robotics, which really is going to have to be about how do we get the best out of people alongside technology, and all these sorts of stats about how many jobs might get displaced or completely changed in the future. And so I love this. You know, a lot of what Laura talked about is you're familiar with the expression FOMO. What does that say? What is FOMO? Yeah, and that is a lot of what's going on our phones, isn't it? We're reading this stuff, oh my God, I don't want to miss out on that, or if it's an email, oh, I might have missed something and I should have been in it, should have been in that conversation, should have read that text, should have responded to it. Fear of missing out. And it's pretty acute amongst the young, and it's a troubling trend in many ways. You can see some of the mental stress it's creating in young people because they're living their lives out there on Facebook and they think everybody else is having a wonderful life and they're trying to portray this wonderful life and they're desperately concerned if they're not part of it. What's FOBO? Gen Z, fear of being offline. For Gen Z in particular, fear of being offline, FOBO. But I also use it in the context of fear of becoming obsolete. Right? Now, if the skills and the jobs and the capabilities we have today are going to get replicated by computers, what does that mean? And of course, of artificial intelligence and machine learning moving up this scale of skills and capabilities is not just about administrative or low-skill things, it's about increasing high-skill things. And if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're an accountant, these sorts of jobs that require highly cognitive and analytical skills, increasingly, not only can artificial intelligence do it well, it can arguably do it better. And there are endless books and endless debates about this stuff. I'd encourage you to read things like The Rise of the Robots by Martin Ford. I'd encourage you to read, if you want the really human aspect of this and some more dystopian views, read Yuval Harari, Sapiens and Homo Deus. Read other books such as Humans Are Underrated There is so much discussion about what this all means, and I don't know what the future work's going to be, and I don't know what the future job's going to be, but I'm going to talk about the things that I think are really important. And I do believe that it should be about how do we create jobs and work that are good for people alongside how we leverage and use technology. But, you know, a lot of stats, 65% of school children may be working in jobs we haven't yet invented. So what does that mean to education? What are we training people to do in the future? And if education, which has been called out for a long time as teaching people skills that are not always the things that equip them to work well, then that gap is growing. And indeed how we work. You know, the fact that technology can now enable much more of working anywhere, any place, anytime, anywhere. And actually this work-life balance is an old paradigm. It's work-life integration. And I don't think it's all necessarily bad. We were just discussing at our table, and maybe I'm not a good example, but I do get a lot of emails, and I get quite stressed out when I'm on holiday if I haven't had access to drain them, because I spend the rest of the day worrying about what might have been on the damn email that I should have responded to. And I do actually feel better when I've had half an hour to clear them. And I say, right, now I can just focus on holiday and not worry about anything else. So it's not all bad necessarily. It's how do we use these things in effective ways. But certainly in terms of how we're working, the growth of the self-employed, the growth of flexi-working, zero-hours contracts, all these forms of working which are growing, and every trend is pointing to the fact that if you look at jobs growth since the global financial crisis, an awful lot of it's been in this space. And yet we struggle with this. We have political debates about it's all terrible, that we should get rid of zero-hours contracts, we should stop this so-called casualisation of labour. But for many people, it's a good thing. It is creating opportunities for people to come back into work and work in very different ways. When we know, to the work-life integration point, that people have different responsibilities. But we've got to get better at this. We've got to build flexible working cultures. And one of the things that is constraining more women, in particular, in staying in work, and women returners, you know, the number of jobs that are open or advertised as flexible or open to flexible working is tiny. Time-wise, who study all this kind of stuff, reckon there's about 7 or 8% of jobs are ever advertised as that you could work flexibly. We have not yet embedded true flexible working as a cultural norm in our businesses. And yet this is an emergent trend. And it's, arguably a very good thing. But then it's got to trade also with security. Yeah, because there's a lot of worry, and I'll show you a chart in a second, that one of the biggest concerns that people have about work is what they would call security. Now, what does security actually mean? Does it mean I've got a permanent job and I'm not going to lose that job? What does it mean? But this is, to say, a real reality, and it's something we need to understand. And then, I love quotes on this stuff. Do you remember who said, love and work and love, that's all there is? Anybody know that quote? Sigmund Freud. So that was a kind of interesting concept, but I actually prefer this one from Voltaire, which is work frees us from boredom, vice, and need. And it's quite interesting if you unpack that. So, yeah, I think good work, which is what this debate is about, and certainly what we think about, and all the work we do together with Engage for Success, is a lot about what is good work, what engages me, what gives it purpose, what gives it meaning for me. And the good news is that there is a lot more debate about what good work should be. You've probably heard of the Matthew Taylor Review that was kicked off by the Conservatives, the Conservative government, with Matthew Taylor, who's the Chief Exec of RSA, to look at modern working practices. But actually he's taken a step back from all of that and said, well, okay, we can see some of these modern working practices. What would be the defining principles of good work? It doesn't matter how or where I work, which is why I get quite cross about a debate that says we should ban a particular form of working like zero-hours contracts, when we know, and we've done research on it, there are many people who work in zero-hours contracts who not only are happy with it, they would much prefer it that way, because it gives them ultimate flexibility. But it does say you've got to have a really good relationship with your boss and with the organisation. They've got to understand that stuff. So the point is, regardless of how I work, or in what form I work, what are the principles of good work? And how can it be that it really does, therefore, free us from boredom, or free us from vice, which is the idea that if I wasn't working, then I might be running around the streets selling drugs or something, or need, which of course we all know about, which is all the way from Maslow, satisfying my basic needs, but all the way up to my more aspirational needs as well. So that should be a very central construct of whatever we do for the future. But if you look at the principles of good work, and then what are the things that people regard as important in good work, interestingly, job security comes out very, very high. Now, that is probably not surprising in the context in which we're working. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern. Financial well-being, we've already touched on well-being. Financial well-being is almost top of the list. The number of people that are what's called in-work poverty, just making it, the just about managings and all of them. So security is part of that idea as well. And I don't think it means that what I need is a 9-to-5 job. It means, can I see some degree of security from that job, whatever, creating an income stream for me. But also, I think the idea that when I'm at work, I should feel safe. And one of the things we've said a lot to people, post-Brexit and even post the election, with the more uncertainty that's going on in the world around us, we've got to create that sense of safety for our people, that they're valued, that they're listened to, that they are recognized for their difference, and that we value those sorts of things. Because a lot of the dialogue going on around us, unfortunately, is headed in a different direction from a lot of those ideas. So I think it's very incumbent on us in work to help to create these kinds of environments and these kind of corporate cultures. And it has never been more important that we do that. So interestingly, high income doesn't figure that high, but good opportunities for advancement, an interesting job, working independently, helping other people, useful to society, personal contact. These are very human things about work. And interestingly, it isn't, and it never has been, just about I want to earn more money. It's about all these other things that give it meaning, give it purpose, make me feel good about myself, make me help to feel that I'm contributing. And we know from all the behavioral science research, if you haven't read Dan Pink's book called Drive, or The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, you should, because it is the elemental ideas behind engagement, and it looks at things like, he calls out 3 things based on many years of behavioral science research. Purpose. So what I do, it has purpose, and I understand that purpose, and I connect to it. Secondly, autonomy. Give me space to operate so that I can give of my best. I translate that as don't treat me like a muppet. And the third is that mastery. Help me improve. It's a very human thing. I want to do my best, and your job as my manager of the organization is to give me the resources and the support to improve. And those are very human aspects of work as well. We've got issues of reward, and I won't dwell on this, but it's a big subject all by itself. You've seen the stats, I'm sure you read the papers. The average income on a real basis has been dropping over the last 10 years or so. And yet, it's not that the economy hasn't been growing. We're in this extraordinary situation of pretty close to full employment in the UK, around 4.9% unemployment. And yet, wages are flat, and still projected to be flat by us and many others. So what's going on? We don't have a fair distribution of wealth. Productivity gains have been landing in the hands of the few, not the many. They've been landing into the owners of capital. They've been landing in the hands of the executives with their big share ownership schemes. And we have to confront some of those things as well, because it speaks to the heart of fairness as an idea at work as well. And the skills divide. We're not utilising the skills of our workforce. And we go back to the idea of mastery. I mean, I've got skills and I want them to be used. And I want to find jobs that utilise those skills and grow those skills, because that's a very human thing as well. And yet we have this big mismatch between the supply of skills and the jobs we're creating. And it's particularly extreme in the United Kingdom. We have, frankly, too many graduates, as an example, which is what we've looked at here, for the number of jobs that we're creating that require that level of skill. Now, that's a two-sided thing. Is the supply wrong, or is the demand wrong? And the answer is it's a bit of both. We have not, in this country, been creating jobs that require and utilise all the skills that we have of the workforce. And we've actually luxuriated in the fact that we've had a very steady supply of labour, of EU migrant workers and many others, which has helped us enormously. But it has also given us the opportunity in work to say, well, maybe I don't have to invest so much in all this technology and clever stuff. I can just hire people to do it. And that's lower risk, cheaper, and all these other things. But it is not sustainable. We have to make better use of the skills and talents of our workforce, not only for economic reasons, but also for very human reasons. So it says there's a lot to think about, right? There's a lot to think about. And certainly as we work with Engaged Success and other groups and other entities, it's about how do we influence the bigger agenda? Because there's policy stuff that's got to happen here. We've got to think about education. We've got to think about demands of society. I started off by talking about the fact that in society today, what is really irking people is they do not think that they're being listened to. And yet they can go out onto social media and they can tweet and they can blog and they can build audiences and get their voice that way. But who's listening? Right? Are they listening in the organisation I work for? Are politicians listening? Is anybody listening? And it's, again, a very human thing. How do we engage people? Well, we've got to give them voice. So all these sorts of things have got to come together. How we work with business and education more closely, how we get regulation and policy right, and a lot of big debates that need to happen. And part of the challenge is they're not all happening. They really are not all happening. There's too much short-termism from a policy and regulatory standpoint, from a business standpoint. Yet the issues we're talking about and the future that I've depicted requires a much more substantive debate. So, to conclude, and I'm then going to ask you some questions on this, get you discuss a bit. We have known for a very long time that the things we really need and we're really looking for is what I would describe as the truly human skills. And the interesting thing, when you look at all this technology stuff, and the more you debate technology and read about technology, is that what more and more people are concluding is the things that are really, really important from people are the human skills. There's something known as Moravec's paradox. Anybody heard of this one? So Moravec is a researcher who said that there's a paradox here in terms of technology. And the paradox is this, that the skills that we have had as human beings the longest, now going all the way back to when we were running around on the savannah in Africa, the earliest forms of Homo sapiens, the skills we've had the longest as human beings are the hardest things to replicate by technology. And there are two areas. What are they?
Psychology.
Sorry?
Psychology?
Well, yeah, extend that thought. It's not just psychology, is it? It's what makes us human. Yeah, emotion, right? Yeah. Emotion, behavior. Right? That's what makes us human. It's not just because we do things like an automaton, although we try to create work environments that treat people like that. The reality is one of the hardest things for technology to replicate is any sense of emotion. And you touched on it in terms of creativity and critical thinking and those sorts of very, very human skills. Anybody know what the other one is? It's so obvious you probably, if you haven't thought about it, it wouldn't immediately come to your mind. It's sensory motor skills. You know how hard it is for a robot to do the most basic thing. If you present it with a tray of disassembled objects in different places, it finds it really, really hard to pick out the right thing and put it in the right place. Which is why we've created jobs. If you've looked at these, Amazon warehouses as an example, great big warehouses, driverless trucks going, all robots everywhere, and then there's one little job left for the human, which is reaching into some shelf to pick something out and put it in the driverless vehicle that's going past them. Is that a good job? No. Frankly, it's a shit job. And the reason it's done is for pure economics, because that's hard to replicate for a robot. Now, good news / bad news, the price points are dropping on us all the time. If you go YouTube, stuff like robots folding T-shirts, you can find more and more, actually, they're figuring out how to get robotics to do this stuff easily. And at a very low price point. It's known as Moore's law and all the growth of technology and drop of price points. So, sensory motor skills, but the one I really want to focus on is the emotional stuff. So, we know that, okay, so to build the technical skills of the job, we're going to have to be pretty good at that, and we have to retrain people. But the things we really want to make sure is we're aligning on things like their behaviors, their personality traits, these truly human things. And we've talked about this for a long time, and we don't always know how best to align these things to what we're talking about, corporate values, professional competence, or whatever. And yet that is where we've got to go much more. And we've got to encourage the development of these skills, because those are the ones that we will really need more and more of. And that's what I find encouraging in all this debate, as I said, about technology. There's more and more people are saying the thing we're going to need are the truly human skills. But we've got to develop them better. We've got to pay more attention to them. If you think about line managers, what have we promoted line managers on typically? If I look at that pyramid, what have we promoted them on? Yeah, the top end of the pyramid, right? They're technical and job skills. But actually the things that really make the difference in terms of how well I engage my people, how well I look after them, how well I coach them, support them, all the things that we know are absolutely fundamental to my engagement, my productivity and everything else, are all these things. So we've got to do a better job of focusing on them, recruiting for them, developing for them, holding people to account for them through our performance management systems and everything else. And that is part of what we can do today and we need to do more and more of. And there are lots of different ways, as we know, and there are a lot of other speakers today that are going to talk about aspects of engagement, but it is, of course, a multi-dimensional thing, and all the work that Engage Success have done on this and their 4 pillars, all of that is really to be commended. So there's a lot of deep work done now around the ideas of engagement and what it means and its importance. And so finally, I think in terms of what it means for us collectively, certainly us as an HR profession, is we've got to drive much more from this idea of principles. And we're driving these ideas in terms of work itself. If I go back to the idea that what we should be thinking about are good work, that's about principles. It's not about a bunch of rules. Yeah, what have we done? What's been the paradigm for work for so long? Here's the rules, here's the policies, shut up and do your job. Right? From a regulatory context, how do you think the regulators were in the City of London? How do you think the regulators at the FCA try to control behaviour of organisations? They write a lot of rules. Does that work? What do people do when you write lots of rules, typically?
Broken.
Yeah, they find ways to break them. Or they will do them religiously without any thought of the context of the outcome. And there are way too many examples of that. So I was just playing by the rules. I just did what I'm supposed to do. The fact that it screwed up a whole bunch of customers or destroyed half our economy, well, no, that was the rules. That's what you read. You can never write enough rules. And we know from behavioural science research for decades that it creates the wrong things. It disassociates people's accountability from their own actions. And if you doubt that, go back to the Milgram experiments of the 1950s. And remember those, the electrocution studies they were known as, which of themselves were marginally ethical, and you can't actually do things like that anymore. But it was really interesting. It was quite insightful in terms of, and I'm not going to explain it, or go Google it if you're interested in it. But it showed what people will do when you just say, here's some rules, just do what I tell you. And they do some pretty awful things. So we're saying, okay, the future work is going to be driven by ideas of principles. Principles of good work, principles that we want to be inclusive, that we want to give people opportunity. And you can express it in lots of ways. But then you start to try from a much higher order of thinking. Secondly, there's got to be evidence-based. We've got to have more data. We've got to understand these things, and we've got to understand the interventions we make and the outcomes that we're trying to drive for. And if we're saying, okay, we want a more engaged workforce, that's great. How does that connect then to things like productivity and outcome? And the interventions that we make in order to improve engagement, how are we measuring that? Do we understand actually whether that intervention is making any difference? And we've been very good in the world of work at looking at the input and not the output. One of my favourite examples is learning and development. How do we measure typically how well people have responded to a piece of learning? Testing. Well, I'd like to think we do that. No, if you put a whole bunch of people, so let's take a more difficult example. Soft skills training, leadership training. What's the commonest measure? There are two common measures, I think, for that one. One is how many people attended the course. And the other is how happy were they?
From the training?
Yes. How much did they enjoy the training?
But not the impact.
Not the impact of the training, no. So it's how happy did I enjoy the training? Well, if I'd been away for a couple of days in a nice hotel and got drunk at the bar at night and met a few people, yeah, I probably really enjoyed it. Did I learn anything? Did it make a difference to my behaviour? And did it make a difference to the outcome? That is the question. Right? Now, L&D has a parallel with the world of marketing. Anybody from the world of marketing? And the people have often said about marketing, the problem with marketing is I know that half of my marketing adds value. I just don't know which half. And I think it's exactly the same with the world that we've created around L&D. I know that at least half my L&D probably adds some value, but I'm not quite sure which half. So you will hear a lot more about this, the idea of going to evidence. What's the data that's supporting what we do? Now, we know that in our world of HR and people, there's more and more data. And actually, a dimension that Laura didn't touch on, which is one of my favourite subjects on the growth of technology and smartphones, is how much data is being collected about you. There's a saying, which nobody can attribute, but I think it's a really good one, that if you do not pay for the digital product, then you are the digital product. So Facebook. Who's on Facebook? Have you ever paid for anything on Facebook?
No.
What do you think Facebook's doing with you? They're capturing a ton of information. And they have the rights to do that. If you've ever checked their terms and conditions, they have the rights to do it. They can access all your contacts, all your searches. They can access your phone. They can switch your phone on. They can actually access your camera. There's an apocryphal story that Mark Zuckerberg tapes over the camera on his laptop and on his phone because he knows that Facebook is always on and it can access your phone and your camera and everything else. And they've given themselves the rights to do this stuff. Why do you think they're doing that? Are they bad people? I don't think they're bad people, but I think there's a real question about where this is all leading us to. Is there's more and more data about us that they can use then to predict what we're going to do and to predict what we think and to guide us in that way. I mean, another great example is we live in a post-truth world. So I read stuff on Facebook, and I love reading, I don't know, it might be far right-wing stuff. What does Facebook then do? They keep showing me more. They say, you like this, you like that. How's that helping discourse and dialogue and critical thinking and all those other things? So these are some of the other aspects of technology, but I'm probably going a little off-piste. So I'm giving you quite a lot of things to think about, right? So future work is challenging, but there's huge opportunity. There's more opportunity for the kinds of things that I think we all do, whether you're in HR or anything else, to help to build good organizations with jobs that make sense, that use technology in the best way for people. And that agenda, in my view, has never been more important and never been clearer. And we've got to drive for that. We've got to drive for it individually, we've got to drive for it collectively. Because if we don't, then the trends that we can already observe in the world of work, like some of the fairness about wealth distribution, about the plateauing of engagement, about the drops in productivity, about the lack of progress on things like inclusion, about the lack of progress in creating working environments that are good for people, that are meaningful, all these other things, they will get worse, is my view. They will get worse. So, to put it on the positive, it's a fantastic opportunity for us to build great working environments. So, I'm getting the kind of signals from Henry. Can I just throw a thought out to you and just spend a couple of minutes on your tables and just see what you think of this? What do you think is getting in our way? If you had to pick one or two barriers, what's getting in the way of us doing the things that I pointed at? Or maybe you believe, it's okay, don't worry, Peter, you're way overblown this, is all cool, we're all doing it, don't worry. Right? So could you just spend a couple of minutes on your table, just interesting thoughts. What's getting in the way? What do you see as the biggest barriers that we need to think about or overcome if we're going to create a world that really engages people, makes great organizations and work truly meaningful? Does that make sense? I've asked you a very big question, and I know it's only 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, but let's have a quick go at that, and then I'll wrap up. So I've got one of these, I'm going to pass the microphone to somebody. Any thoughts, observations? Enlighten us with your depth of knowledge and thought on your tables. Who wants to go?
I think the challenge is we've got lots of evangelists in the room, and we love it, get it, and you articulate it better than anybody that I've heard articulate it, so thank you for that. I think the challenge is that there are a bunch of CEOs out there in the mainstream who, you've almost got two camps of people. You've got the people that get it, they get culture, they see either as being good people, and they see the link between doing it the right way and the results, or you have the people that say, well, we're making money anyway, I don't need to care, I've got VCs, investors, to care about, why do I need to change? So I think it's great to be able to educate the people in the room, because we're all in it, but the challenge will be with the very red people that care about one currency, and that is growth and profit. The challenge is, how do we get, outside of our own organisations, how do we get more people on board, I think.
I think it's an excellent point. Would people agree with that? And I think you're absolutely right. And I do characterize that the way I meet lots of different people, business leaders. You can see a community that get it, see it's important, and you can see a lot of people that say, I'm not really sure, tell me what the problem is. Look at my profits, or whatever it is. Any other quick thoughts? Yep. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point. Have you heard of sort of workplace democracies and holocracies? Have you heard of this? So there are examples like Zappos is one of people's favourite examples, an online shoe retailer, and the chief exec said, I want no rules, I just want people to turn up, do what they're passionate about and get on and so forth. They very quickly had to create a rule. First rule was something along the lines of, you can do what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what I'm prepared to pay you to do. Because everybody wanted to be in marketing or product creation or something, nobody wanted to do accounts. But you're right, it's about context as well, isn't it? I mean, if I go to this, anybody from the civil service, if I go to a place like the civil service and say, we've got this great idea, what you need is to democratise work, take away all the rules, all the processes, and just let you all get on with it, they'll look at you in abject horror, right? That's not how they think, it's not how they work, right? It's a culture where they like process, and there's nothing wrong with process in the right context. So you're right, it's about understanding the balance and the context. So another thing I'd just leave you with as a final thought, because I've got to get off, is there is no such thing as best practice. We have for long lived in a mantra. This is how you do this stuff. This is how you write processes. This is how you write rules and policies and organise things. And HR's been particularly good at that. This is how you do performance management or whatever. And the answer is there is no such thing as best practice. It's about what is best fit. It's what works best for you in the context in which you are, the kind of organisation you are, the kind of culture, the people, and all those other things, what you're trying to accomplish. And you work from principles and understand the outcomes you're trying to drive and make it work for your context. But of course, there are some common values and ideas of which I've tried to talk about. What it means to be human, how you engage people, and those should be common things. But the way in which we organise work and structure work is very context specific. Okay? So thank you. Hopefully you had a little bit more discussion on your tables, but these are big themes and we need to carry them forwards, and I think your point at the end there, spot on. We can be evangelists, right? So we may be preaching to the choir, but what a great space to be. Evangelize. So thank you very much.